Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Major Kurt DeZeo, welcome to the retirement ceremony to honor Chief Master Sergeant Kevin D. Jackson. I am Senior Master Sergeant Amber Abramowski, and I will be your narrator for today's ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the posting of the colors. The official party. Ladies and gentlemen, Major DeZeo and Chief Master Sergeant Jackson.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner
Good afternoon, everybody. Please join me in prayer. Gracious God, we are grateful that you are our security, our refuge and strength. You know when we sit down, when we rise. You perceive our thoughts from afar. Before a word is in our tongues, whatever language it may be, you, Lord, know it completely. And you know the plans you have for us to give us hope and a future as we call upon you. We thank you today for the privilege of celebrating the culmination of the truly incredible career of Chief Master Sergeant Kevin Jackson as he completes a marathon of 30 years of faithful service to God and country. We thank you, Lord, for all those who have played a part in shaping, supporting, mentoring him throughout his life. Parents, friends, family members, teachers, superiors, and subordinates alike, who could stand with him today to say, well done. We especially celebrate the love and support he has received from his wife, Laura, their children, Jake, Kate, Nicolette, and Jacob, ever mindful of the sacrifice they have made to undergird Chief Jackson throughout his career. Most of all, we thank you for your faithfulness in his life, that by your grace and our abundant life you have given him through Jesus Christ. You have led him throughout this brief part of his journey. As he and Laura transition to the next phase of their journey through life, we pray your continued guidance and direction as they trust in you with all their hearts, leaning not on their own understanding, but in all their ways acknowledging you, knowing that you continue to make their paths straight. Today, as we speak with the human terms, those words we each long to hear at the end of our life's journey. Well done, good and faithful servant. I ask that each of us might reflect with gratitude on the grace you have given us, and that we might renew our own commitment to you, to our nation, and to each other, that we might ever remain the land of the free and the home of the brave. Amen.
Please be seated. At this time, we would like to extend a special welcome to the family of Chief Jackson. The reason Chief joined many years ago, his lovely wife, Laura, his son Jake and his wife Kate, his daughter Nicolette and her boyfriend Jacob, his sister Karen Bandy and her husband John, the parents of Karen Jackson, Mitch and Cynthia Galliant, Chief's good friends, Jeff and Starlet Shannon, and Mr. William Wood. We would also like to recognize the special guests we have here today, the 70th ISR Group Commander, Colonel Curtis Madeley, the National Geospatial Agency Senior Enlisted Advisor, Command Chief Troy Croft, the 70th ISR Group Superintendent, Chief Theodore Gambogi, and the commander of the 94th Intelligence Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Chansey. Finally, we would like to welcome all commanders, chiefs, first sergeants, co-workers, and friends who have taken time out of their day to share this special occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, the presiding officer for today's ceremony, Major Kurt DeZeo.
Thank you, Senior Chief. All right, good afternoon and welcome. I'd like to open with a quote from Pericles, a Greek statesman. What you leave behind is not what is engraved on stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. While Pericles was speaking of mortality, this statement equally is appropriate as we celebrate and honor Chief Jackson's career and his service to our nation. As I look into this audience, there's no doubt to the extent of this man's positive influences that are woven into lives, many of your lives, and they're woven into mine as well. Kevin, when you asked if I would preside over your ceremony, I was humbled and honored beyond what words can describe. So thank you, my friend. Again, I'd like to welcome the family and friends who've come here to celebrate this. Kevin's extraordinary career, as well as all the senior leadership from not only here at Fort Meade, but even other locations. So thank you for that. Especially Laura, welcome. This is a big day for you as well. It's awesome to see you, and as you get ready to take this new stage in your lives. And to the kids, Jake and Nicolette, and as you've grown into adults and your families, I'm very glad to see you here honoring your father. All right, before we go in too far, could the Texans in the room raise your hands, please? There's got to be a good bunch. All right, there always is in the Air Force. Thank you. All right, good numbers I suspected. Take pride in your fellow Texans. I've known this man since 1988, and he's a patriot through and through, and he's done so much in the defense of this nation, so be proud of that. For those who are not part of the intelligence community, you probably know very little about what Chief Jackson did over the last 30 years. Given the nature of his work, he's had to operate in secrecy, sharing very little of the details of his challenges and accomplishments throughout his career. Do know that without question, he's humbly served this nation, making key contributions that help shape our nation's policy, international relationships, as well as he changed tactical battlefield outcomes, starting before the first Gulf War, during 9/11 and the wars that followed, and through today. He achieved the nation's highest enlisted grade through hard work, intellect, and devotion. I would like us to reflect on that last word for a moment. I believe it's a word that really well describes Chief Jackson, devotion. It's defined as an act of dedicating something to a cause, enterprise, or activity, or the fact and state of being ardently dedicated and loyal. Okay, that last part really strikes home to me as describing the Chief's efforts and his work. His unwavering devotion to God, his nation, his family, and fellow servicemen is extraordinary. He's lived his life and continues to do so in a manner that every one of us should strive to emulate. His faith in God is clearly evident. No one has to wonder whether he's a man of God. If you know him, you know this through his daily actions. His faith is the foundation, providing his moral compass. It's a guidebook for how he treats others with kindness, sincerity, and fairness. When you sit with him at the dinner table and he says, "Shall we say grace?" it's not really a question. It's a statement. All right, so Air Force. So how does this skinny kid, all knees and elbows, humble confidence, get from Devine, Texas, a small town with a population of about 4,000 people, to here, Fort Meade, and all the places in between that we'll hear about today? First, he understood the value of education. After he got out of high school, he spent 3 years trying different approaches to going to college. None really quite fit. But while he was at UT San Antonio, he did find a fit for something far greater than education. That's where he met Laura. And she's turned out to be the perfect fit and partner for him in their lives. So now, the senior chief mentioned that she was the reason that he got into the Air Force. Well, there's a lot more to that story. So Kevin was working as the two were together, and trying to make ends meet. And one day, and these are his words, he says, "Kurt, I quit my job out of pride." So here he was, out of work, and what do we do next? So while he was, you might think that he just decided, let me go see a recruiter and join the Air Force, and the rest is history. Typical Air Force story. Well, not quite. While he was mulling about, deciding what to do, Laura quietly made an appointment with the Air Force recruiter, didn't tell him until it was upon him, and said, this is where you're going to be and when. And then he asked her, what made you think of that? And she said, you're there, Kevin. You're ready to serve. We know that. And he says, why the Air Force? And she replied, well, I thought it was the smartest service. Again, Laura nailed it. So, awesome. And so began their 30-year journey in the Air Force. Now, when they asked me to do this, they said, you can spend as much time on the Chief's career as you want to, but limit it to 15 minutes. Now, that doesn't seem quite right, does it? 30 years, Chief, in 15 minutes? We're going to try. So we'll focus on some of the highlights, and then we'll get to the cake and punch. So after basic training, as most linguists do, Kevin started out at Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, to get basic Arabic. Graduated with honors from that program. And on top of that, he and Laura began to grow their family. Jake was born while they were out there at Fort Ord, where they lived. This is also where Kevin and I first met. I was in language school, one course ahead of him in the Arabic program, and they saw us get off the bus different times and said, well, it was fall, so the Air Force intramural basketball team was starting to form. And they said, you got these two tall guys, they got to play basketball. Well, never mind, we didn't have a lick of talent between the two of us. But regardless, we practiced against each other, hence my comment about him being all elbows and knees, right? I've got firsthand experience, trying to push me out of the center. But we played, we practiced together against each other, and we played with each other against the other services. So that was where we started. Next, we were in the same class out at Goodfellow, and that's where I really got an appreciation for how sharp this guy was. His ability to pick up the language and develop the tradecraft as a linguist on the technical side was astounding, and I really took notice of what he brought. Now, following Goodfellow, Kevin was first assigned to Fort Meade, where he began working shift. Laura was pregnant with her second child at that time. And if you may recall, so let me put a timeline in here. It was in the summer of 1990, and Saddam Hussein had just invaded Kuwait as that was kicking off. So the Gulf War was happening. Desert Shield and Desert Storm were progressing. Now, as an A1C, that shift team was supporting the forward forces. Even as an E3, Kevin had attained the role of mission controller, so in a leadership position, and was providing critical intelligence to that war effort. Here, Kevin and Laura were faced with a really difficult choice, balancing that dedication to mission and the nation while needing to raise their family and take care of it. So they decided that it would be best for Laura and Jake to travel across the country to Texas, where Laura gave birth to Nikki with Kevin's mother at her side, allowing Kevin to stay here and work the extended hours of mission supporting the war effort. The contributions of his and the other units here at Fort Meade were recognized at the highest level when President Bush flew in on Marine One to the parking lot over at NSA, and then recognized the units in person for their efforts and contributions to the war effort. So in his first performance report states, A1C Jackson should be considered for position of leadership and promoted ahead of peers. From get-go, he was on a trajectory for chief. Next, he and Laura packed up their family for the first overseas assignment, and they went to Heraklion Air Station in Crete, Greece. Now, for those who've been around a while, we had a robust operation there, and about the time they got there, the base closure was announced, and they started to shut down. So they were continuing to do the mission, and he was devoted to that. But this is where his tendency to take care of people began to emerge in his career. Kevin having come from Fort Meade, was one of the key people who helped many of the unit members transitioning back to Fort Meade learn about the unit, the mission, and the area where they're going to live. So he was part of that transition team. So then he returned to Fort Meade, and in this tour he kept developing his skills, perfecting his tradecraft. This is where our paths crossed again. We were assigned to the same, over in the headquarters building, assigned to the same shop, and then we reconnected, which was welcome. Next, Kevin continued mastering his craft. He went to the intermediate course out at DLI. So he spent another year getting more language training, and then he went on to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he again applied his superior knowledge and skills to achieve mission excellence. Now, his career took, I'll say, a non-traditional path. As in most cryptologic linguists kind of cycle within that circuit that I just described, but not Kevin. Okay, while he was a tech sergeant, he was picked up to serve a U.S. CENTCOM forward position in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And in this role, he was performing liaison duties and translator duties for U.S. interactions with the Saudi Ministry of Defense and Aviation. He was the day-to-day front man for dealing with the Saudis' military for logistics and cultural issues that arose between the U.S. forces and the Allies. And remember, right following the Gulf War, we had hundreds of thousands of troops between the Allies and the U.S. forward there. So he was called upon time and again to translate documents and facilitate emergency troop movements and other issues. Again, very non-traditional role for a cryptologic linguist. So pretty exciting. But this assignment really was a testament in the faith and trust that the Air Force had in Kevin's knowledge, skills, and steadfast demeanor. I spent a lot of time in Saudi myself, and certainly know that working with them is a whole different process than dealing and negotiating in America. So hats off to you. Next, he went to Goodfellow Air Force Base, and he was the course supervisor. This is a role that really came naturally to him. He was a teacher, a mentor, and he developed hundreds of young troops in their tradecraft. He was also there at Goodfellow during the events of 9/11, which raised certainly the sense of urgency and importance to that schoolhouse mission. He was churning out Arabic linguists that were greatly needed at operational units all around the world. The shortage cannot be understated. So huge contributions in growing the force there. During this assignment, Kevin was also called for another non-traditional mission. So again, for people who know the military and the linguist career field, how many Arabic linguists get to go to Southcom? Right? Very, very, very few. But all expenses paid. Here he was in summer of 2002. At that time, I was the officer in charge of interpreters at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, Camp Delta. And the U.S. was housing hundreds of suspect terrorists there at that time. They had been rounded up around the globe, brought there. So I couldn't have been happier to see one each Master Sergeant Kevin Jackson walk into camp as my non-commissioned officer in charge so we could run that operation together. Now here our team was made up of what I'll call a ragtag group of junior enlisted and junior officers from the 4 military services. Now I say that, and you can't make this up. We had 2 native-born Russian infantrymen in the U.S. Army. We had a Turkish-born Army admin troop, a second-generation Iranian-American in the Army. He was a truck driver. We had a Haitian-born soldier. I have no idea what he actually did for his real career. We had a Lebanese-born general's aide, a Syrian-born Marine rifleman, several recalled Army inactive reservists. So they'd gotten out of the Army. You know, that 4-year period when you get out and they say you might be recalled, the Army did that. Okay, one lady had 2 babies in those 3 years. Another guy had a great job, brought him back in. So if you can imagine the leadership challenge of that mix, 4 services. A lot of these young troops had been in the U.S. for maybe 2 years trying to get their citizenship. None had been trained in intel. None had been trained in interpreting. They just spoke the languages we needed, right? So our job was to facilitate up-close and personal communications with the nation's greatest enemies that had been captured, and U.S. security forces, medical teams, and their interrogators, both relocating from overseas and in the camp. So Kevin stepped right in and said, "LT, I've got it." He managed the troops, I managed the task force leadership, and we got the mission done. And I quickly learned that when Kevin said, "LT, why don't you stop by this evening? I'll put a cup of coffee on." It meant that there was business with the troops, with the detainees, or between the troops and the detainees that needed our attention. So who'd have ever thought that back in DLI in 1988, where we first met, that we'd reconnect there in that place in those circumstances. So the funny thing is, when we talked about this assignment and how his progression through his career, he said that was one of his most memorable assignments. He said it stood out because that was the time that gave he and Laura time to raise their kids. They were really in a formative stage in life, and kind of inquisitive. Never mind that deployment and the fact that it was during that tour that he finished his bachelor's degree, right? So that was a light period in his career, what I just described. So outstanding. So on the heels of that assignment, Kevin was picked up to get his master's degree out at here in Washington, D.C. at the National Intelligence University. So again, the Air Force is recognizing all the potential that he had. He was also promoted to Senior Master Sergeant during this tour. So again, from the beginning, this guy's pretty sharp, and the Air Force recognized that. Right, following school, he spent the next 4 years at Langley Air Force Base in both squadron and wing positions. At times, he was responsible for the operations of more than 2,000 active duty National Guard reservists and civilian members who conducted intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions supporting U.S. and coalition forces in such places as Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. During this time, again, he had another non-traditional opportunity, as we'll call it. He was sent to Afghanistan to manage hundreds of NATO translators, advise on a biometrics program, and work with local citizens, where he spent considerable time outside the wire. His team's efforts reduced corruption in the local Afghan military forces. The biometrics program identified bad actors, and they were removed from their positions. The team also, some of their information led to removal of unexploded ordnances in villages in Afghanistan. So the impact he had on the people, the children, and the locals there is immeasurable and tangible. Now, at the same time, Kevin operated regularly within earshot of gunfire, explosions. So the role of combat support, okay, we hear that in the Air Force intelligence community all the time. I was doing combat support. This became very real. So Kevin was on the other end of that personally and his troops back here, or at Langley at the time, were keeping overwatch over him. So I think it gave new meaning and realism to our work every day in the intelligence community. All right, so recognizing his potential for even greater responsibility, Kevin was promoted to Chief Master Sergeant in 2011. And from then until 2016, he and Laura were in Germany with back-to-back assignments. This time it was different, though. The kids were on their own, and Kevin and Laura found themselves alone in Germany. So a whole different opportunity. They were able to focus on each other and their church. Taking care of this very demanding mission was a given for the chief at this point. But it was here that he really gained the realization that he had attained a rank and position where he could where it became easy to help people, that he could make a difference. As a phone call from a chief makes things happen in the Air Force, right? So this focus on taking care of people carried into his final assignment here at the 94th Intelligence Squadron, full circle to where he began his career. As I wrap up, I want to share some quotes from his last few commanders. Kevin is a chief whom all airmen should strive to emulate. His advice is sought by unit commanders. He has dynamic enthusiasm and character, immeasurable benefit to airmen, a world-class mentor. He's the rock I built our squadron on. He grows leaders. Unit morale is an all-time high, and he's a chief's chief. Right? So that came from the bosses. Now, as we were preparing for the ceremony today, I kept an ear out for all the people that approach Chief. Okay, I saw a young airman approaching him, thanking him, quietly appreciation for the things he's done for them. And to me, that is just evident of who he is, and is more powerful the representation of who you are than the accolades from the top. All right, moving on to family. I'm going to revisit a couple of things here. Through all of these challenges, adventures, and times, Laura, Jake, and Nicolette were either right in the middle of it all, or supporting him as he traveled to faraway places. And in some cases, I'm sure they didn't even know where he was or when he'd return. Laura, you well know that being a spouse is probably the most difficult job in the military. You had the challenge of maintaining a family structure amidst frequent moves, constantly meeting new friends, saying till next time to old friends. You usually get to see them again. And nearly always living far from your family. You also had to master being a chameleon. And one day, a committed partner to your relationship, and in the next, being able to be self-sufficient and independent when he was away. Time and again, Laura showed her colors. In the true spirit of strong Texas women, she stepped up, raised their babies into independent adults, worked, and maintained their home. Thank you for shouldering so much to allow Kevin to focus on his duties. So, Laura, Jake, and Nicolette, thank you for letting this nation have so much of Kevin's time and efforts and energy over these 30 years. Today we return him to you full time, whether you're ready or not. All right. And then you're off to your new adventures. Moving home to Texas, new jobs, new house, all very exciting, and I wish you the very best together. I'd like to close with a verse from Scripture. Isaiah 6:8 came to mind when I reflected upon Kevin's service. Isaiah heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Then this man, Isaiah, replied, Here am I, send me." Kevin heard his nation's call and responded as Isaiah had responded to the Lord. Kevin, my friend, be proud of how you served your nation, how you've positively affected the lives of so many around you. You've shaped the lives and the example that you've given us through your devotion to God, country, and family.
Thank you, sir. If you would both please take center stage so we can present the medal. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the decoration. Attention to order. Chief Master Sergeant Kevin D. Jackson distinguished himself in performance of outstanding service to the United States as Squadron Superintendent, 94th Intelligence Squadron, 707th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Group, 70th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing, Fort George G. Meade, Maryland. Chief Jackson led 460 airmen in the execution of 11,000 missions and 5 combatant commands, resulting in the elimination of 209 insurgents from the battlefield. Additionally, he negotiated the transfer of 12 enlisted authorizations from national mission partners to stand up the squadron's first Special Access Program mission, which was responsible for facilitating the rescue of 5 hostages within the first quarter of the mission's initiation. Furthermore, Chief Jackson secured local instructors for the base's Joint Language Training Center, which doubled training classes, facilitating 150 linguists to increase proficiency and save the Department of Defense over $2 million in travel costs. Moreover, he was instrumental in energizing a dormant vulnerable mover process with functional managers and superintendents at multiple echelons, providing new professional development opportunities to 170 airmen across 10 squadrons. Finally, his steadfast leadership was instrumental in the unit garnering the Wing's nomination for the National Security Agency's Director's Trophy for 2016 and 2017. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Chief Jackson's culminate a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Major DeZao will now retire Chief Master Sergeant Kevin D. Jackson.
Publish the order.
Attention to order. Special Order Alpha Charlie 008993. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, effective 30 September 2018, you are relieved from active duty, organization, and station of assignment. Retired effective 1 October 2018 per Air Force Instruction 363203 in the grade of Chief Master Sergeant. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. You stay. You must stay. The Major will now present Chief Jackson with the Certificate of Retirement and the Presidential Certificate of Appreciation. Chief Jackson will now be presented with a retirement letter from the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And it reads, Dear Chief Jackson, I send my personal congratulations and offer the country's sincerest gratitude as you retire from the United States Air Force for your many years of service. I am proud to have served as your Commander-in-Chief. Your dedication and leadership in uniform has been critical to defending the freedom at an important time in our history. The commitment to duty and professionalism with you and have served the United States has left a fine legacy for the United States Armed Forces, which continues to inspire generations of Americans. Thank you for your contributions to the safety of the American people and the security of America. Melania and I send the best wishes for success in all your future endeavors. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless our great nation. Sincerely, Donald Trump. Next, Chief will be presented with a certificate of appreciation from the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. No, I will not. I can if you like. You have a lot of things to get through, Chief. Next, we will do a time-honored tradition of the presentation of the flag. The 70th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing Honor Guard will now present the United States flag flown over the U.S. Capitol at the request of Senator Ted Cruz in honor of Chief Jackson's retirement. Additionally, this flag has made the trek to the Darmstadt, Germany Dagger complex with the men and women of the 94th Intelligence Squadron. For more than 200 years, the American flag has been the symbol of our nation's unity, as well as a source of pride and inspiration for millions of citizens. Born on June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress determined that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternating between 7 red and 6 white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field representing a new constellation. Between 1777 and 1960, the shape and the design of the flag evolved into the flag presented before you today. The 13 horizontal stripes represent the original 13 colonies, while the stars represent the 50 states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardiness and valor, white signifies purity and innocence, and blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Traditionally, a symbol of liberty, the American flag has carried the message of freedom and inspired Americans both at home and abroad. In 1814, Francis Scott Key was so moved at seeing the stars and stripes waving after the British shelling of Baltimore's Fort McHenry that he wrote the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. In 1892, the flag inspired Francis Bellamy to write the Pledge of Allegiance, our most famous flag salute and patriotic oath. In July 1969, the American flag was flown into space when Neil Armstrong planted it on the surface of the moon. Today, our flag flies on constellations of Air Force satellites that circle our globe and on the fin flash of our aircraft in harm's way in every corner of the world. Indeed, it flies in the heart of every airman who serves our great nation. The sun never sets on our U.S. Air Force, nor on the flag, so we proudly cherish. Since 1776, no generation of Americans have been spared the responsibility of defending freedom. Today's airmen remain committed to preserving the freedom that others won for generations to come. By displaying the flag and giving it a distinctive fold, we show respect to the flag and express our gratitude to those individuals who fought and continue to fight for freedom at home and abroad. Since the dawn of the 20th century, airmen have proudly flown the flag in every major conflict on land and skies and the sea around the world. It is our responsibility to continue to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and freedom that we as Americans enjoy today. The United States flag represents who we are. It stands for the freedom we all share and the pride and patriotism we feel for our country. We cherish its legacy as a beacon of hope to one and all. Long may it wave. You to come to center stage, please. Laura will now receive her own flag that was flown aboard a C-130H on the 4th of July during a combat mission over Iraq. about being a spouse at a retirement ceremony is you get many things. Next, Laura will receive a certificate of appreciation from the United States Air Force, and it reads, "In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents the certificate of recognition to Laura E. Jackson for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Signed, General Dave Goldfein, Chief of Staff, and Colonel Matteo Martimucci, Commander, 70th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing." Next, Laura will get a certificate of appreciation from the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Caleb Wright. And upon the wondrous things of receiving a new home, Laura will receive a gift from the 94th Intelligence Squadron, something for you to put in your fabulous new kitchen. Next, I would like to have Jacob and Nicolette come forward. The children of Chief Jackson will now be presented with certificates of appreciation from the 70th Intelligence Wing Commander.
Let's get it.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Nicolette. You may sit down. Thank you, Major Dizao. Laura will now pin Chief Jackson with the Air Force retired lapel pin. Unconventionally, just like the chief is, we have some other things we have to give him, so he will just have to wait a few more moments before he can speak, which I know is probably killing him. So, first up, I would like to have Master Sergeant Waller and Senior Airman Green from Cougar Reach please come forward. For those of you who don't know, Senior Airman Green is a level 20 forger of knives.
That's right, from Cougar Beach, all 87 of us. We just wanted to present you this for your dedication to our squadron and to the Air Force for 30 years. He forged that in fire specifically for you, so please enjoy.
But wait, there's more. Senior leaders of the 94th, Major Swinarski and Captain Morawski, and Senior Master Sergeant Smith would like to present you something from the Senior NCO cadre and Officer cadre to say thank you.
Sir, well, this has been fun, hasn't it, Chief? Oh my gosh. We really want to thank you for all you've done. And speaking on behalf of the officers and senior NCOs of the 94th, you've done so much to make sure that our airmen have been taken excellent care of, so that our mission can get taken excellent care of. And they're a history buff, so we'd be remiss if we didn't send you out with a little piece of history for the entire squadron and all the aircraft that's supported over the years with the well wishes of the officers and NCOs and leaders and people you work with in the front office. We greatly appreciate what you've done for us. Thank you, sir. That's awesome.
Next would Staff Sergeant Debbie Valdez from Cougar Pack please come forward.
Chief, on behalf of DOA, I'm very grateful for you teaching us, leading us, and advocating for us, and for attending our morale events even when they're on nights. And we also really appreciate you reminding us again and again and again and again at every opportunity you can that the first person we lead every day is ourselves. Now, when we learned that you were going to be a teacher, we were wondering, how's that going to go for the grade school students? That's going to be very interesting. So, DOA, your pack has decided that this flight it may not be forged in fire, but we decided to give you this gift. It's a book, Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire. Hopefully this may help you guide, inspire, and encourage your future students as you have done this.
Next will be Sergeant Badley and Senior Master Sergeant Drew with something from the front office.
Alright, so Chief loves to read and he loves history. So this is from all of the airmen, and it is a story that we all wrote for you that starts off with our hero, Kevin Jackson, and it follows the imagination of airmen, which goes crazy places. Sergeant Valdez, who was just up here, did some awesome calligraphy work on it, and then it just goes into the story. So,
Chief, real quick before we move on, I know you had a chance, but it looks great. No, before we step out of here, I know you're going away and got an opportunity to talk, and thank you for everything. But I just wanted to pause it for just a second, just for you to take a look out at all the faces here, and actually just take a mental snapshot of all these faces that you've impacted in such an amazing way. Because this goes really fast, right? 30 years in the service and we're honoring it in an hour, maybe two. But really, it always amazes me when I come to the retirement ceremony that we honor such a long and just distinguished career in just a short amount of time. So I just didn't want you to miss that opportunity, Chief. So thanks a lot for everything. Get in here, John.
Comrade Cougar, Tech Sergeant Behringer, and Tech Sergeant Martnow.
Cougar.
So, Chief, on behalf of DOR, we'd like to present you with a painting, and as a small token of our appreciation, we can't thank you enough for everything you've done. Sergeant Martnow here will explain a little bit the meaning behind this painting.
So we were able to do a little bit of research on this painting and the artist. What we have is Troika on the street in St. Petersburg. The Troika is 3 horses harnessed together in parallel, and the Troika can achieve speeds of 30 miles per hour in the 19th century, which is pretty good. horses, to Sergeant Friday when he picked it up, represent three enlisted tiers. You can imagine. So I'd like to give this to you in appreciation.
Very, very nice. Thank you, guys.
The painter was a deaf mute.
Really?
Yeah.
And finally, Mrs. Karen Bandy with a special presentation. That's Chief's sister.
I know. I've never told you how proud I am of you, so now I'm sure. I'm proud of you and Mom and Dad.
Sweat.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you for the first time Chief Master Sergeant Kevin D. Jackson, United States Air Force, retired. The Chief has a few things he'd like to give out to some special people that are in the audience.
Yes. So
The floor is yours, by the way.
before I talk, with the obligatory flowers and that, no, it's not. So just some mementos. Hey, there's no way, you guys did a lot of retirement ceremonies. It's not, there's no way I can't really pay them. There's no gift, big enough or anything like that. These are just little small tokens of my appreciation. So the lavender one is for someone else. That's lavender, right? And then yellow. For pink. Thank you for being a part of our life. You made it great. And the last one. But that's not all. Sure, my son. So, my son has been telling me for years that I'm not a veteran. He served in the United States Navy, and he's a veteran. But I wasn't a veteran, so I got a hat that said veteran on it. First off, it really means a lot to me that you're all here. I know you're very busy. I've been to many of these, and I know if you've been to a few of these, you're like, oh, can't we get on with it already? But thank you so much for coming and for everyone for all the events and everything, the stuff that my family has not seen before. So I'm very, very grateful for that. If I can figure out how to get my iPad to start, then I'll start. So first off, I want to thank God and my family. Without them, I couldn't have gotten through this. My Christian faith has sustained me and encouraged me. None of this would have been possible without them and Him. And by Him, I do mean Jesus. And thank you, Chaplain, for that prayer. Thank you, sir, for coming out. I know you're very, very busy. Thank you, Colonel Maley. Chief Croft, Chief Gambogi, my newest commander, thank you, man, for coming out, and for everyone else, too. Thank you, Kurt and Melissa, for making the trip. It's really good to see you guys again. Their kids are growing up like ours as well, and it's super to reconnect with friends. I wanted him here, as I've told a few of you, because he was here at the beginning. And for me, it's good closure to have someone there who's at the beginning to see. And Kurt and I have run into each other throughout the years, and this is awesome. Thank you, Senior Abram. She hates Senior, and I love it that it's official that we can use that. Not like I ever stopped. Thank you, Sergeant Abramowski, for setting this all together. Thank you, Airman Kinzinger, very, very much. Recently married Airman Kinzinger. A round of applause.
Thank you, Honor Guard, Obi and Mac. Awesome job, like always. Thank y'all very much. Baron 52, thank y'all so much for doing this. From the moment I got here and I first heard them saying that was one of that they're going to be in my retirement ceremony. Thank you guys. It sounded. What do you guys think? Thank you to my kids for being here, my sister for coming out. Thank you, Jeff and Starlet, for making the trip. We love you guys. Bill, thanks for coming out. I've known Bill almost as long as I've known Kurt. More friends like Chuck Hammond here, Gordo is here, Troy's an old friend, and some other folks out in the audience. Some members from my church are here. Thank you all for being here to share in this event with me. It's probably more out in the audience. I'm sorry if I don't see you. My contact lens changed the prescription, and I'm wearing old ones. And so it wasn't tears that I was trying to blink away. I was trying to be able to see a little bit better. But thank you all for coming out. So I think this is farewell retirement speech 4 or 5. I've kind of lost track, at all the different events that I've been to. But a huge thank you to my Cougar family. When I tell people I felt like I won the lottery when I got to the 94th, I'm not kidding. It is not a lie. It is not something I say to make them feel better. It is the honest truth. The 94th rocks. They have a great mission and great airmen in super leadership. Fantastic place to work. Well, let's get started. You thought that was the beginning, but that was not the beginning. Who's the first person you lead every day? Yourself, right? You choose your attitude. You choose your work ethic. Nobody else does. You do. From the moment you get out of bed, it's you. Because life is going to come at you and it's going to do things to you. But you decide how you respond, and that's on you. Hey, and you guys have heard it from Sergeant Valdez. You decide your attitude. You need to make a disciplined lifestyle your goal. Develop and follow your priorities. You need to challenge your excuses. And the last one's the most important. Never, ever trade what you want most for what you want right now. I hope you heard that. Never trade what you want most for what you want right now. So why do I repeat these? Because I believe in them. I try to live by them. I use quotes often from the Bible and from other ancient philosophers, so forth. These aren't sound bites, pithy sayings, blurbs. I believe that they are eternal truths. There is goodness, beauty, and truth in the world, and it is worth pursuing. There's also ugliness and lies and evil in the world that must be confronted. Much of why we serve is to battle the latter and to protect the former. There's so many friends, mentors, commanders, supervisors, leaders that to thank. I know I'm going to forget some. Way back in the day, Army Sergeant Jonathan Hopwood. My first supervisor, Staff Sergeant David Bartlett, Jeff Carruthers, Stan Corbin, Rick Van Tassel, Tony Costello, Dave Burnham, Cecil Ussery, Tom Sparks, Jimmy Miracle, Mick Travis, Bert and Ernie, Pack, Danny and Trixie Adams, Shirley Hohen, Senior Master Sergeant Dean. He was a VIT linguist, was the first Senior Master Sergeant I met outside of basic training, and I don't know his first name. Are you kidding me? This was, way back in the day. I did not even know his first name. Bob Barkey, John Knopp, Army Lieutenant Colonel Richard Lekowitz, Steve Kanomakis. Thanks for coming out, Kano. Mark Webster, Paul and Angie Hubble, John Natale, Andrew and John Natale and his wife, Michelle Daly, Andrew and Vanessa Weiland, Paul Moss, Don Moss, Dave Groves, Baron Brock, Rod Sayers, Colonel Hayworth, Colonel Grunwald, Colonel B.B. Lane, Colonel Bunning, Gordo Heron. Thanks for coming out, brother. Right, he's over there. Let's see. Paul Baker, Kevin Pendleton, Austin James, Colonels Beaver, specifically Colonel Matt Beaver, who I work for. He knows how to balance his moments. He's a great example. Michael Van Zant, First Sergeant Ben Cameron, his wife Robin, Troy Croft, Warren Trish, Chuck Common, retired Army First Sergeant Mark Wood, my good friend Jordan Booker and his wonderful family and his beautiful family, Colonel Keith Watts, Colonel retired Michael Freiberger, Colonel Reese Bell, the Marriotts, Nick and Jackie. Thank y'all for coming. We practiced being grandparents with their kids when we were in Germany those years. It was an awesome time. The Chief Corps that led the way when I was a youngster, Chief Dowling, J.J. Graham, Dale Weber, Calhoun, Don Alexander, Paul Boggs, William Spruill, Kevin Slater, retired Command Sergeants Major Paul Hitchman, Vargas, Redmond, Willis, my current colleagues and Command Sergeants Major in Chief, and Teddy G. Thanks, brother. He was a fantastic group chief. You made my job easier. Chad Hauk, Jen, you, Josh, Sabrina, Dave, my replacement, my new best friend. He was my replacement. My new best friend. Rondo and Sergeant White, thank y'all. Thanks everyone for coming out. This really means a lot to me. And if I skipped you, it doesn't mean... Mark Miller, thanks for coming out, brother. One of the first best op soup I had. And then leading up in today, he set the mark, and these guys have met that mark. And to the first sergeant, hey, Sergeant Giroux, you're an awesome first sergeant. Thank you. And your wife's awesome, too. She's pregnant. They're doing a couple months. Pretty neat. Hey, so Chief B. Smith now, Chief B. Smith, Scott Giroux. I could tell that the 94 was going to be a great assignment when I met her, and then when I met him, he came on board, and he just picked up the ball and started running. He's awesome. You have a fantastic first sergeant corps here. Appreciate them. They do an awesome job. Seniors Pletz, Abramowski, Kyle Smith, the command and deal staffs, current and past, present, and future. Well, not future, I don't know those guys. Thank you all. If I missed you, I'm sorry. It's not because you don't run across my mind every now and again. I just kept adding names and kept adding names and kept adding names. I see some former students here, and that's awesome. It all starts happening very quick. Frankie G. Thanks, Frank. Thanks for coming out. So being able to serve for 30 years and to be a chief is it's a huge honor, and not one, as you've heard earlier, that is easily put into words and something that didn't happen. I didn't realize that I was going to join, but that it isn't your doing whenever you serve. And, for however long you serve and when you get promoted, you know that there's other people who were involved and made that happen. I certainly didn't know in the summer of 1988. You guys remember The Flame by Cheap Trick? Bad Medicine by Bon Jovi? The movie Rain Man? Die Hard? The 80s rocked, right? I didn't know back then that in the summer of 2018 that I'd be standing here, retiring from the Air Force and settling back to Texas with Laura. For one thing, I didn't imagine that. It wasn't in the realm, and then when it happened, it all worked out. She did make the appointment. I'm not kidding. She did. And I guess you could say it worked out. So she's very intelligent, wise. I married up. So my father served for 24 years. I was very familiar. I enjoyed going on post, getting a haircut. I still remember that. Fort Sam, there were fish. There was a fish tank there. Anyway, she's very wise. More on her later. Times have changed. When I joined, cigarettes were in the aisle and condoms were behind the counter. Now that's flipped. I'm not sure what that says about America. I can speculate. I don't know. We were issued olive drab greens in basic training. We were the last class. The next class behind us was getting the BDUs. Of course, the military being the military, they got to use up all the stock. So I did have the OD greens. Just picture MASH in your head if you're too young in the audience to know what OD greens are. But I could polish my jungle boots. I'm not kidding when I say you could see your reflection. I was proud of those jungle boots. To us and those like us. My advice for all of you was at the beginning of this. We're almost halfway, by the way. So take care of the airmen and they will take care of the mission. Whatever new catchphrase comes along, whatever new trend, whatever new EPR system, however they're going to mess with the uniform, and I do hope they do go back to the uniform I had when I first joined with the pocket. I think it was really cool. I couldn't find it. So if you come to the reception afterward, you'll see some of my old uniforms and patches, which are, you're going to love patches. They're awesome, right? They give you more of a sense of an identity. So you take care of the airmen, no matter what new thing arrives, no matter what it is. Take care of the airmen, and they will take care of the mission. Set the bar high for them, and they will meet it. Set the bar high for them, and they will meet it. Look for airmen doing good. Don't be on the prowl for airmen doing wrong. Look for them doing good. This is your life. This is your career. Are you the leader that you want to be? All these accolades, for which I'm very grateful and touched, thank you guys. If I didn't have this written down, I would be speechless. Thank you, Karen. They don't come close to finishing with the wife that I started with. There were many times early on that I didn't give my bride much reason to want to finish with me. I wasn't the best husband. I wasn't a horrible husband. But I certainly didn't give her the respect she deserved. Thank you, Laura. More later. So my family is my touchstone. They steady me. They're the reason I keep going until the end. They have supported me all these years, and they are all examples of character that I try to emulate. My son, Jake, is everything I could ask for in a son. It's one thing to serve and to know that you might have to give your life for your country. It's entirely another when your child serves. He deployed twice during his time in the Navy. He guarded ships that our enemies were seeking to blow up. His command was formed after the USS Cole was bombed and nearly sunk. Not only was the front line protecting Americans and our allies, he was doing the same thing at home. In the summer of 2010, after a stranger's vehicle was hit in a traffic accident and caught fire, he pulled the guy to safety before the thing just went up in flames. He and his then-girlfriend, Kate, and they're married now. We couldn't be more pleased. We're traveling the opposite direction when this happened. He was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for this, the highest non-combat award for heroism. Now he is a lineman in Virginia. He's taught me in many ways what it means to be a dad and a husband and to be a man, a brave man. Thank you, son. I love you. And I'm a veteran too now. He and his wife, Kate, obviously are here today. Kate has worked as a nurse in ERs and the surgical ICU. She's seen more tragic things than I could imagine. Thank you, Mitch and Cynthia, for being here. We love Kate, and it does our hearts good to know that you love Jake. Nicolette, our daughter, is fiercely independent. Nicolette was ready to go out on her own before she graduated high school. She even told us one night, came downstairs and said, I think it's God's will for me to move out of the house. We convinced her that God would wait until after she graduated. But true to her word, she struck out on her own and found a job, and an apartment, and a full-time job. She then moved back to Texas while I was in Afghanistan and pursued her degree, all while working full-time and becoming a manager. Perhaps not so remarkable until you learn the rest of the story. You see, in 2010, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Being independent, she was fighting the battle on her own. But when Laura and I found out, we hopped on a plane to go see her and help out. And to make a big deal about it, but that's what she was worried about we were going to do. Thank God, she's been in remission for over 7 years. She's one of my heroes. I love you, honey. Her determination is staggering. She puts her mind to it, she will get it done. She is currently working on her doctorate degree. Her beau, Jacob, is here. Thank you for coming, Jacob. He's a pilot and flies drones for a railroad company. I wonder if that's similar to what some of you guys. Laura, my bride. My eloquence fails me when I think of how much I owe to God and to you. You two are the most important things in my life. Although many times you must have felt like you were third behind the Air Force. There isn't a gift big enough, expensive enough, grand enough to repay you. But I'm going to keep making up to you, as I have been since I realized a while ago that I wanted to run out of career before I ran out of family. We were married before I joined, and it has been a terrific ride. I can't imagine my life without you. You're my confidant, my friend, and a wonderful wife. I'm so very blessed to have you. You have put up with a lot over the years. We all know how difficult it is to be a military spouse. You see, if you read the program, you notice that she has had well over 20 jobs in the years that we've been in. She's been promoted numerous times, always picking up, following me, and starting over. This woman has done amazing things. Moved the whole family by herself, packed up the whole house, and so much more that defies description. I love you. Laura and I have been some really cool places. Been through some really good times and faced some really tough times. It has all been worth it to have my family sitting here today. To finish with the woman I started with, I would do it all over again if I had to, knowing that you would be there with me. Laura, I don't deserve you. Thank you for sticking by me. Thank you for making me the man I am today. I could not have done this without you and the kids. As fine a career as I've had, it wouldn't mean very much if you weren't here, if you three were not here. We've done a lot of traveling. We've toured Europe during our last assignment: Rome, Berlin, Paris, Prague, Budapest, London. Our kids were able to come over and tour with us. So many memories of my career and our lives together that I look back and see a beautiful mosaic. I didn't quote anything today, but I will paraphrase Merle Haggard. There's a million good daydreams to dream, but Laura, you're my favorite memory of all. Thank you.
Okay. So, congratulations, Chief. I don't know what to say. Okay, we're good. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, in the back of your program, you will find the Air Force song for those of you who do not know it. The expectation today is to sing it loud and proud. Chief Jackson, would you please lead us in the singing of the United States Air Force song, loudly and proudly?
I'll give you that don't know it opportunity to look it up. Some soldiers here might want to look it up. Ready? Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, soon to meet our thunder. Atta boys, give her the gun, give her the gun! Down we dive, spouting our flames from under. Off with one hell of a roar. We live in fame, we're down in flames. Hey! Nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the green room for a lovely reception and to congratulate Chief and his family. Thank you all for your attendance today. Woo!